Hello, hello. We are back. It is Sew Together Tuesday, and I'm so excited you are here. We are back again for another episode. Today, we are working on a really fun project that we are using AccuQuilt dies. So thank you to AccuQuilt for participating in today's project. I'm very excited to be here. If you have not joined us before, welcome, welcome. We do this every week. It's super fun. We do these little sewing classes, and we have projects that we do every week. This week, we are doing the Circles and Squares quilt, which is a fun little thing. Let me pull it out. One example I have for you. We're going to talk a whole bunch about it, and then we'll get started sewing. A lot to talk about today. Okay, so there we go. So this is the Circles and Squares quilt. We just called it that. It's a really basic name because we're just working with circles and squares today, and then we come up with this fun little quilt. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of variations on a theme so that we can work out what works best. But I really love this project because of its simplicity. And it really is just the two things. We're using the AccuQuilt die today, the circle die. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's what makes this project just super duper easy. Okay. So the pattern for today, if you haven't gotten it yet, you can get it from the website. It looks like this. You can go to the blog post, which should be listed up at the in the comments somewhere. You can find it, and you can download this little pattern that'll show you how I'm going to put this thing together. So you may be familiar with this style of quilt. This is it's basically like a mock cathedral quilt. So a real cathedral quilt is a lot of work, and so they've come up with this mock cathedral quilt that's been around for a while, and I've seen different variations on it. I made just a little sample to show you that basically the way that it works is you start with this square and then you bring those over, and it creates the backing and the front at the same time. Okay, so here we've got the back and then the front. These are the circles that come down. The way that we make this is with these circles and squares. So these are some that I did before to use for this, right? So here's the circles and the squares. If I do this with cotton, the reason why we want to do it with cuddle is because if I do it with cotton, I have to sew two circles together, right sides together, get them all nice and neat, pink the edges, and then I cut a hole in the middle and turn it inside out. Okay, when I do this with cuddle, because cuddle doesn't fray, I'm just able to cut a circle and use that. Okay, so that's what all of these are, is just a circle. Where's my edge? Here we go. So here's still left with the circle edge. It's just a circle with a square in the middle. Super duper easy. So if I were to do this out of the traditional, it's way a ton of work. If I do a mock cathedral out of cotton, it's quite a bit of work. If I do it out of the cuddle, it's super duper easy because the cuddle is a knit and it doesn't fray. So we just cut it and go. All right. It's super duper simple in that regard. And so this one has a lot of variations available, and we're going to talk about the different fabrics that you can choose and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So I want to make sure that you know that if you share the video that you'll be entered to win a kit at the end of today's little show. We'll give away a kit to a lucky winner, and then you'll be able to make your own cuddle strip quilt. Also, because we're partnering with AccuQuilt, they have been nice enough to offer anyone who wants to get this die, or any other die that they have, because they have a ton and they are great. They're offering a 15% discount on their website today and tomorrow. So if you are interested in getting the die, that's a great time to do it. I think, yep, the code is down at the bottom, so you can see the code. You put that in, the discount code, and be able to get a discount on your die. So I love the dies. We were talking about them this morning and how many I have, which is a few. I just use them a lot. I love them. And so for things like this, like a circle, it's just so much easier than trying to cut out a circle. If you do not have a die cutter and that's not necessarily in your plan, you can absolutely do this without the die. You just need to make yourself a circle that is an 8-inch circle. So this die is an 8-inch circle, and I just stick it in the machine, and I'll show you how I cut it out. Super duper easy. If you don't, you can just trace it and then cut out the circles. Okay. All right, I think we got the basics over with. So let's talk about some choices on making it. All right, I'm going to move this out of the way just a little bit. Oops, let me turn it so that the cord goes the right direction. Okay. All right, so this is the one that I made as a sample, is this guy. And I'm just going to lay it out so we can see it. Okay, and I didn't quite finish it. I'm going to toss these. Okay, so this is all of these circles, and I tried a whole bunch of things on here. So we'll talk tomorrow. We'll talk about the final putting it together and the top stitching and stuff. I tried a whole bunch of different top stitches. I did a bunch of different fabrics, and we can talk about what worked and what didn't work so well. So because Luxe Cuddle is, like I said, a knit, it's not going to fray anymore after we cut it. But one of the things about it that I realized, particularly with this quilt, is because the nap, with the way that the nap goes in the fabrics, it can really affect how it works out. So fabrics, I realized, that have a very strong nap in one direction didn't work as well as ones that had sort of a mixed one when we're talking about the Luxe Cuddle. So I had a few of them. So you can see here I used a few different kinds. This came in the pack. So I'm going to show the little pack. So this is the the Sweet Strips pack that I used for part of it. So I used these two and this one, and then I got a couple other purples that I tossed in there. But this is a great way to start if you want to use a Sweet Strip pack. Okay, so what I found is that the circles that have, or the fabrics that have a solid backing work better, because when this comes around, I can't really see the edge very well. What I found was that when I used this one, this is the Forest Fox, which is beautiful, it definitely has an edge because of the nap and because of the backing. Okay, so I could see that. And so it didn't work as well as I wanted it to. It still works, it's in here, but you can definitely see those edges, which was not the look that I was trying to get out of it. Okay, so it works, but what I found is if I used one that had a solid backing, it was better. Okay, this one is the same sort of thing because it has that light backing here. When it flipped over, I can see that edging just a little bit. Okay, so you can see on here, if we go next door to the hide, which is what this is, and it has the solid backing, you can't see those edges hardly at all. Okay, so that was what I found out from this one. And then I thought, well, let's try out some other fabrics and see what I can make happen. Okay. So that's what we're talking about today, all the fabric choices. So I cut out another section that I'm going to make up, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll sew those together and see how they work. Talk about all the fancy stitches we did, and there was a lot of them. Okay, so the other one that I wanted to cut out and try was with this cute gnome fabric, because the gnomes are just awesome. So this is a fun little Valentine's one. And for this one, I used the Demi Rose, which is great because it has the solid backing. So even though this has a nap, it isn't quite as visible, and because of the red backing, you don't really notice. Okay, so Demi Rose was a great choice to use. I also tried the embossed hearts, which is kind of like a C3 with the embossed parts little cut out there, which worked really, really well. So the edges on that you can see are perfect with solid backing. Works great. Okay, I also gave the chenille a try. And the chenille I was really happy with too, because I love chenille. So there's that. So chenille worked great. And it has the solid backing, nice edges. So even though it has a nap, and I can tell the nap goes this direction, it isn't funky along the edges because of the way that it's made. Okay. So Marble, Galaxy, Glacier, all of those worked as well. And more of that information is on the blog about which ones you can get. I'll probably add to that as I keep finding ones that work really well that I'll be like, oh, that one, we could use that. Okay, so part of it, when you're picking what you want to use, part of it is picking a print that you want to kind of spotlight. You could actually use numerous different prints if you wanted to. The reason I chose the flower one is because there's so many different prints in that one, and that one is called Peony. I think it's Digital Cuddle Peony, and it has a whole bunch of different prints in it. That's what I really wanted, was you could cut different areas and get different prints. With the gnomes, I cut them out a little bit differently, and we'll talk about those center squares, but the gnomes are super cute. So I'm going to make a little one of that. So you know what I'm doing all afternoon today? It's just making more little circles and squares. Okay, so we'll talk about these in just a second, how I did that. Okay, and then the other one, the one that we're using today, I'm going to get my little die too, is we're going to use two of the cuddles, just the solid cuddle, well, a solid cuddle and a digital print cuddle. So for the outside, we're going to do the two of them, and we're going to sort of go back and forth between them. So instead of mixing a whole bunch of solids and stuff on the back and then putting a print in the middle, we're actually going to flip-flop them. So that'll be kind of a fun one to do. So we're going to use the Cuddle 3, and this is in Jewel. And then this is, I believe it was called Bee Garden. And it's a super, super cool little digital cuddle print, which I love this one. I think it's super cool. It's a nice variation of purples. So kind of like you could choose a bunch of different purples that would go with this really, really well. The jewel was one that I had. Yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. So we have a lot of purples and this would go well. So you could mix the purples, or this one, we're just using one of each. Okay. So let me show you how I cut the circles. We'll do that step next. Okay. So I've got a bunch of them already cut out. And then we're going to cut some more. Okay. So if you have questions, I didn't tell you that, but if you have questions, of course, please stick your comments in there. If you share the video, you'll be entered to win. The other thing is we are actually giving away some blankets because of Valentine's Day. We're giving away some pre-made self-binding blankets that are 36-inch square blankets. And you can enter to win those by going to the blog post for today's project. And then you can enter to win there, and we'll be giving those away, I think on Monday. We'll be giving away 4 of those blankets. So that's pretty exciting. Get your own cuddle blanket that you didn't have to make, which is even better. Okay. All right. So I've got my big old die cutter here. So this is the electric version. This is the Go Big. And this is the electric, which I really love. So they do have a crank version. I have this one, so I use it. It's awesome. So I've got my die. This is my 8-inch die. Okay, if you're not familiar with using dies, you can absolutely use them with cuddle. The way that it works is there is a blade down here hidden beneath the foam that will cut the fabric as it goes through. I like to do 2 layers at a time, and that is all. Okay, with cotton, you can do more layers. With cuddle, I don't recommend it. 2 layers is better. If you're using luxe cuddle, 1 at a time is even better. You'll have a smoother cut. So the digital cutter, we're going to lay these 2 together. Okay, right sides together, because I always want my nap to go up from the blade. So the blade is going to come up from the bottom because this all gets pushed out of the way. So the blade is going to come up and it's going to push toward the plastic guard that I'll put on. I want the nap to go that direction and not into the foam. You need to clean these things out anyway, but I feel like the less I have to clean it, the better. Okay, so then I'm going to stick my little mat thing here over it, and I just feed it through. Easy peasy. Okay, so that's it. All of a sudden, now I have a circle. All right, so I'm going to take this off. Burp, burp. Okay, I'm going to take these circles off, and I'm going to make sure I cut these. So every once in a while, it won't cut, and I just trim it, because what I found is what I want to do is just pull that, and if you do, you get like a weird little blip in your fabric, so don't do that. Oops, there we go. Okay, so normally with cotton, you can kind of just pull, and it'll come out. With the cuddle, I like to make sure that I clip it just in case. So I'm going to take that off. I'll throw that away. It's a perfect circle. It's the thing about the dies that make them so wonderful, is it's just absolutely perfect circle. All right, so now I will take these, and I'm going to take them to the side, and I'm going to give them a little, just get rid of some cuddle dust there. Okay. All right. So now when I've got this, I can vacuum this, or I can tape it. I was going to show you guys a little trick that I learned along the way, because one of the things is when you're doing this, you're pushing the nap up, and so it kind of gets stuck in the mat. All right. And you can see that on here. You can see where I've cut it, and it gets pushed up and it gets stuck in there. It's pretty normal, and that happens. And you can I can kind of do this and get it off. But what I found is if I use my friend, the packing tape, I love this stuff. Sorry, it's so loud. I can kind of just pull it off. Okay. And then you can see it comes off right on there. So I did this other thing. I'll show you where I took it. See if I can do it with less noise. Oof, it's obnoxious. Okay. And then I sort of just wadded it up. And I can take all the mess out really, really easily. Okay, so it's just packing tape. Just get all that mess out. It just will make your board last longer if you get the fibers out of it. So it's important to do the same with your Same with your actual cutter here, is that they make a tool that they'll that you can get that will actually clean out this area. So make sure that you do that every once in a while and get that clean. You can tell people who haven't taken care of their dies, and it'll probably be filled up with little fibers from all the fabric that you've cut, no matter what kind of fabric it is. All right, that'll happen. So make sure that you're keeping your die and your mats nice and clean as you're using them. So we're going to cut all of the circles, and then we're going to get to the squares. All right. Okay. Any questions on that? We're good. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to set this to the side. I'm going to put it on the ground actually, because I don't want to keep it up here because I need the space. But it's the Go Big 8-inch die. Okay. I'm going to move that out of my way. All right. So now once we've got all of our circles done, and I think I had 9 that we were going to do today. So you can make this literally as big as you want. When you're finished each of those squares of your quilt, so each of these will be about 5.5 inches. So you can kind of figure out how big you want to make it by using that measurement and then going from there and cutting as many circles and squares as you need. Okay, so once we have our outside circles done, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut the inside circles, or the inside squares, excuse me. And so we want to cut them depending on how you want to do it. We just want to make sure that they're going to fit in there the way we want them to. So I've cut 5.5 inch squares, or 5.25 inch, sorry, 5.25 inch squares. What? 5.25? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 5.25 inch squares that I'm going to cut. So I'm going to cut those a little bit smaller. When I mark my squares, I'm going to do it at 5.5. It's probably why we're confused. So we'll get there. But my squares are actually cut 5.25. That way they sit inside just a little bit and they won't poke out at the corners at all. Okay, I can kind of hide it in there and give you some little wiggle room. So my circles are 8-inch circles. My squares are 5.25 inch squares. All right. Okay. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. When I did the little gnome ones, because that fabric is so cute, I'm just going to bring this over here so I can show you guys. This fabric is adorable. Okay. These gnomes are just the cutest darn thing. I knew though that if I cut it and I cut a 5.25 inch square, I might end up with a really, like I could end up with this section, which would be really wonky and not as cute as I want it to be. So I wanted to get it so I would get the gnomes in there. So I just went ahead and fussy cut them. All right, so that's what I did there. And I wanted to show you guys how I did that. Can use my new ruler or my new board. Like, I got a new board. Remember we talked about this before. I need a spinny board. I finally got one. Very excited. Showed up yesterday. It's exciting news. So I'm going to show you how I did the fussy cutting with them. We could do it with the bee fabric because that's what we're going to use today. I've got my circles cut of that, and then I need to do the squares. So I'm going to get the right ruler for you guys. And I'm going to show you a couple things. So here's my fabric that I'm gonna fussy cut. I'm gonna find a couple of places that I think are extra cute so that when I get a 5.25 inch square, that it's not like some weird place on it where it's mostly white. I want images on it. So I'm gonna fussy cut that. You don't have to. And part of it when using the peony, like the reason I wanted to use that was because it is so floral. It's just filled with the flowers. So it didn't matter where I cut it or how I cut it. It was gonna be fine. There was gonna be flowers in it. I want to use today a print that is a little bit more sparse. So I'm going to use the fussy cutting technique to do that. So I've got my ruler. I've got a 6x12 inch ruler here, and I'm going to mark on my ruler using this glow line tape. So it's a product from OmniGrid. We've used it before. I really like it for this sort of project because I can mark the square size that I need. Okay, so I'm just going to come down to my ruler. I'm going to find 5.25, and I'm going to line my tape up. Oops. So I'll be able to see where that line is really easily. So this way I can fussy cut it and know exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so here's my 5.25. Here's my 5.25. Okay, and I'm just going to trim that. Put that away. Ta-da. Okay, and now I want to, I'm going to come over here, and my center is going to be at 2 3/4 and 2 3/4. So I know that, so I'm going to measure up 2 3/4 over here. Here is the center of my square. So I want to make sure that my design is centered here so that when I put it into the square, my little circle, half circle bits will come over here and this will still be shown really nice and cute. So that's the first step. Then I'm going to lay this is obviously my scraps from cutting circles. So I got some circles cut out of there. Now I'm just going to come and I'm going to find places where this is all going to fit. So if I put this in my middle, that seems like a good center, right? I'm going to get that on there. My nap is directional on this. So the print is directional. So my nap is going to run this direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these two. And then I will turn it. Because I got the fancy board, I can do that now. Look, I just trimmed up my tape. That was perfect. Okay. Now, see if I can do this. Look at that. Look at that rotate.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. I'm very happy about it. Very happy about it. Okay, now I'm going to turn my, I don't know why I haven't bought one until now, but it took me till now. Okay, so now I'm going to line this up and I'm going to use my little tape so that I know exactly where to line up those raw edges that I just cut so that I can get a 5 1/4 inch square. Okay, so this helps it. So putting that tape on there means I don't have to measure it with my eyeballs every time. And especially because it's a little bit of an odd measurement, 5 1/4 is harder to remember. I might think it was 5 1/2 or 5 or like not see the line right, all that sort of stuff. And then I end up cutting the wrong size squares. So by putting that little line on there works really well to keep that in check. So there's one. Let's do a couple of these. Let's find another one that we can do. So here's another one. Use that same process where I'm going to make sure that I've got it all within that pink and the edge. And then I'm going to put my design in the middle. And then I'll cut around the edges again. Okay. Choo, choo, choo. Oh, no, it moved. I caught. Oh, no. I'm going to have to get it all settled again. That's why we don't want to do that. Don't have too much on your plate. Guys, it's too much on my table. All right, so now I'll do this again. Measure it, make sure that I'm even. Okay, and I think I need 4 of these. So let's see, that one has a nice B in the middle. That one did too. I kind of want one. Let's see if I can get one with that thistle. It's not quite going to be in the middle. That might work though. Let's just do it and see what happens. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move my ruler this time and not my fabric. How's that? See if this works. I don't have to reposition again.
I was concerned about you using your Sharpie right on the ruler and rubbing alcohol.
Rubbing alcohol will take it right off. Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
Thanks, Shelly.
Yep. That's exactly right. Okay. I do have to rotate. Burp, 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 burp. Oh my goodness. I have to stop keeping stuff on my table. Like I could do that. Yeah. Stop having so many projects, Teresa. That doesn't work. Sorry. There's just going to be some variations here. I might toss the gnomes somewhere else, though. So let me move that. And then they won't get in my way anymore. All right. So yeah, absolutely writing on that was totally fine. It will stay on there for quite a while. It will come off. It's how I write my name on things a lot of times. So sometimes you'll see my rulers. And because I used to travel and teach so much and I would bring my own supplies along, one of the things that I learned along the way is always put your name on your tools. So make sure that if you ever are going anywhere with your tools, have your name on them. So the Sharpie works really well for that. It will wear off over time, but it definitely works for keeping your name on things when you need them. All right, let's do one more. Okay. See if we can get this B right here. Okay. I'm going to whack that off because that is just junk now. Okay, so now I can see where I'm supposed to be cutting, and you guys can see it a little bit better now if I move the fabric out of the way. So I'm just going to line that up on my ruler. I don't really have to be too finicky because it's cuddle and it's going to hide underneath the edge, but I am a quilter. It's what we do. We get finicky sometimes. All right, so now I've got another little bee square. Okay, so now I have all of my circles, and I think I have all of my squares. We're gonna give it a shot. Okay, we're gonna see what we've got here. All right, so here are my circles of my bees and my circles of my purples. And then I've got my squares of purple and my squares of bees. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to combine these together so that these will have the purple in the middle. So it'll end up being like this. Okay, and then next door to it will be one that's like this and like this. Okay, so that's the way that these are going to end up. So they're going to be sort of backward, like back and forth, which I think will be really cute.
Nice.
All right, so I've got my squares, I've got my circles. You can see I have marked some of them. I'll mark the two that we just cut with the accuquilt, and I'll put these over here. So we're going to deal with all the circles first, and then we're going to deal with all the squares. So I'm just going to move those aside. So here's my big pile of squares that I'm going to use later, and I'm just going to put them over here. Here are my circles. I'm going to mark these guys. When we're marking this, when the quilt goes together, let me show you on here. We're going to lay these together. So one of the things that you have to do is figure out your layout, how you want it to go together. You want your nap to go all in one direction. All right, so that's important, is to figure that out. So with this one, I kind of laid it out and then I sewed them together in strips, which is what we'll do with this. But it was a little bit more complicated because I used, I think, 4 different fabrics. So trying to get it so that they weren't touching each other and matching, like blah, 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 that became like a little bit of an issue. We're just going to do sort of, you know, A, B on this one. So it'll be, you know, the purple and then the print, and purple and print. All right, but you'll want to lay it out first. When you're doing that layout, we want the nap to all go in the same direction. So to make that happen, before we do the layout, we need to make sure that we've marked it so that the nap is shown. You could do it without marking it at all, with which way the nap is going. But if you do mark it, it's just easier because when we lay it out, it's really easy to see that they're all going in the same way. All right, so what I'm going to do, because I know this is directional, it's easy enough for me to look at it and be like, oh, that's which way the nap goes. Okay. Once I turn it over, it's a lot harder to tell. So I'm going to literally just flip this over, make sure that the nap is going. Okay, so it goes this way, it looks like, and I'm just going to flip this over. Now, I don't know if you can see, but there are lines in the fabric of where it is woven. And so I want to make sure that when I'm putting my template, which is a little 5.5 inch square here, that I'm putting it on there so it kind of goes along those lines. I'm not going to get too worried about it and make sure that it's super duper perfect on there, but I do want to get it so that it's fairly even. I don't want it so that it's like this, because then when I turn it, my nap is going to be wonky. All right. I want it so that the nap is going to be straight up and down. All right, because what will happen is your nap will be wonky on all the edges. We don't want that. So I've got my 5.5 inch square. Okay, we'll show you a little trick later about how you get this square, but I just cut it out individually, and then I'm just going to mark here, here, here. So one of the things about marking it with the gray is you can sort of see it through this edge because of the white background. I'm not going to care because this is my sewing line. So I don't, can you see that just a little bit? Yeah. And so I don't really care because it's where I'm going to sew. So it's not going to see, but I kind of going to lift up and I can see there's a design right there. So I'm just going to do a little, my arrow is going to be here. When I did it on the purple fabric, it's never going to show through to the other side because it's already dark enough that it can't show through. So I can mark it whenever, wherever. I started marking it with the silver, and you can probably see that the silver wasn't as visible. So I went over and remarked it in the black. Okay, so you need to mark all of your squares that way. So let's mark the other one as well. So this one I'll do the same thing. I'll figure out, okay, so I can look at the picture and I can figure out, okay, this is the way that the nap goes. Then I'm going to flip it over, line it up with the knit lines, I guess you would call it, in the back. And what I'm doing here is, if you can see, I'm leaving just the tiniest bit. So I'm trying to get it evenly spaced on there. It's a little bit smaller than like touching the corners. And the reason is because it is thick. I wanted to give it a little bit of extra, and the Sharpie kind of takes that so that you can see it just basically meets up with the corners anyway. All right, so 5.5 inch square for this, 5.25 inch square for my inside. It's going to fit just like this. All right, that gives me a little bit of room that if I get it nudged up here, it's okay. I still have enough. I still have some space. It's all right. I don't have to get all 4 sides lined up perfectly. It can be a little off and it's going to be okay. All right, so there we've got that. Oh, I need to get the nap marked. So let me find which way, or there's got to be a print in there. There's one. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little one so I can see that's which way my nap goes. All right, so then we're going to lay them out. And the way that this works is we're going to actually sew all of our circles together and then we'll do the middle. So I know that I want it to be a B and then a purple and a B and a purple. Okay. If I do, wait, if I want to do, I'm going to do 3 by 3 is what I was going to do. So let me do like this, and then we'll do the next one, purple, B, purple. All right. So this is how I want them. If I've marked the nap like this, I can see which way they're supposed to go. And it's really easy for me to get these all in the same order. So the nap is actually going to be nice and smooth on the other side. If I haven't marked it, I have to recheck it every time and like pet it and try to feel which way it's going. With this, I can just see that, yeah, my nap is going to go that direction. So I'm going to sew these two together. So the first thing you want to do is lay it out like this. And then we're going to sew each square or each circle together to create a little square. So right sides together, these are going to come together right here. Okay. So then what I'm going to do, I get these together and I'm going to pin the corners. So what I want to do is make sure that my corners are matching up. So I'm going to stick it through. It's a little bit off. I'm going to move it. Okay, sort of like a little quilter trick there where you can like stick it through one corner, stick it through the other corner. All right, that matches. I'm going to pinch that corner real good and stick a pin in. Then I'm going to come around to this corner and do the same thing. I'm going to stick a pin in. Stick a pin in, pinch it so that my needle or my pin is going to go straight down. If it's like this, I know it's not actually straight. So I'm going to move it so my pin goes straight through and pin it in position. All right. So now this is the line we're going to sew on. This is important to keep in mind. So if I do this pin here and this pin here, I know that I'm sewing between these two lines. I can't get too confused. It's not impossible, but I'm less likely to get confused by it. Okay, so I'm going to pin there and then I'm going to pin here. I want these two edges to match still. So I'm going to pin here and then I'm going to pin on the inside. So I'm kind of going to do some scooching and making sure that things stay where I want them to. So these circles are still even. It's one of the things about it being a die is that I know that those circles are actually perfectly the same. So I'm going to try to get those to be even up there. So I'm pin that, and then I'm going to pin over here and here. So we're going to do that same double pinning that I like to do with Cuddle, and where we're going to sew down the middle. So I'm going to get this in. I'm going to put my needle down carefully. Then I'll take my pin out, sew across, and take my pin out here before I get to it. These pins will stay the whole time to help keep this in position as I go. All right, so you ready? Come around. We'll do a little bit of sewing.
Let's do it.
Okay. Come on over. Get my little notes out of the way. Okay, so we're going to do this with a straight stitch. So I've got my machine set up. I've got some neutral sort of thread, some cream color thread. It's a straight stitch, and I'm going to do it at a 3.5 stitch length. If I can get it to change. There we go. Okay, 3.5 stitch length. Polyester thread. I'm using Metler Metricine, which I love. It's great thread. We want to use a polyester thread with this because of the strength that it will have. I'm going to come around here and crank this so I can get my bobbin up because I just put in a new bobbin. Make sure everything is in position. All right, so now, and I've got my 90-14 stretch. So always a stretch, always polyester. And then I've got my digital dual feed here on my baby lock. All right, so I'm going to put this in. I can see my needle is going to go about there. I'm going to put this down and I'm going to slowly crank my needle down so it gets in position. That way, if I hit my pin, I can sort of shift just a little bit if I'm doing it with the hand crank and not with my foot pedal. So now I'm going to go forward a couple see if this will go. There we go. And then I'm going to go back a couple right to that corner, and then I'm going to come off and sew all the way across. It's just a straight stitch, hitting that line as much as I can. And then my back stitch and cut my thread. All right, so now we've got my seam stitched all the way across, fairly close. Totally missed that side. We're going to see how that works because it totally was fine on the other one. I'll show you this works. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big difference, actually.
It is. Yeah, it's because it shifts
Especially
down.
Considering you pinned
that I pinned it
really well.
Yeah, exactly. So it shifts. Don't freak out. Okay.
All right. No freaking out.
No freaking
Check.
out. Okay. So now I've got my pieces sewn together. We'll try it on the other one. The reason that happens, and I will tell you, it's because of the naps, because when we put them together, the naps are going in different directions. So they're kind of doing this and they're fighting each other. So they don't want to sit together as nicely as I want them to. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and you'll see it'll work out. It's why we let it be a little flexible. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. See if we can get it better on the next one. I'll try to be better. I'll try to make the fabrics behave. It doesn't always work, as you notice. Okay. And it is because
you're in charge.
I'm in charge. That's right. It's my fabric. I'm telling it what to do. But you can see it doesn't really want to, I can't slide it up. It doesn't want to do that because the naps are going in different directions. Okay, so it's just part of the nature of this. And there's no real way around that one. Okay, so I'm going to get these corners to match.
With the Sharpie marker that you're using to mark all of the lines on here, there's no problem with that bleeding.
No, I've never had any.
I've
never had any issues. Yeah, with it bleeding at all. Okay. So this one, I'm actually going to turn this over because when I stitch this, speaking of the lines, I want to make sure that this one actually gets sewn on so that it isn't, it doesn't show at all. Okay. I want that to be caught for sure.
Oh, because if I sew the light colored fabric.
Right. If I sew it on the purple side, I can miss that line and then it may end up in the square and then you would see that little shadow. And I don't want that. Okay. You can see how they want to fight each other. They really do. They're like, but come on. Okay. Now I'm going to put a couple of pins in here. And I'm going to find my other pin here. I'm going to see if I can get that to lay a little bit flatter. So really what I want to do is make sure that my circles are as even as possible. So that's what I'm going to try to do. It just wants to shimmy right there. Look at that. It just moved on me again. It's like a teenager, I swear. You tell it what to do, and it's like, nope, don't want to do that. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. So now let's sew that and see how that works. Okay. I see that you see how that edge wants to move up. We're totally going to get the stiletto involved here. All right. It's interesting because I did this with just one little piece that I did it with the C3 before. And the C3 definitely wants to do this more. The Cuddle 3, the flatter Cuddle wants to do this more than the Luxe Cuddle does. Okay. Put my needle down. I'm going to shove these things out of my way and then I'm going to sew. Okay, so I can kind of keep these together a little bit better by stabbing it. Really wants to shift up. It's irritating me.
I see it.
Yeah, it wants to curl. I'm like, wait, you didn't do this before. Why are you doing this now? Oh, because you're live. Right, got it. Okay. We're just going to sew across, get that pin out of the way, and do a little back stitch. Okay. The thing about Cuddle we've talked about lots of times is that it's super forgiving. So even though if it's not going to be perfectly straight, that one was a little bit better.
Yeah, you got that one.
Even though it looked like it was super off, that worked out fine. It's super forgiving, so we'll be able to do all sorts of nice things. So now I've got my nap, going in the right direction. All right, so now I'm going to do my next strip. Ready? I'm going to get these set together, and then tomorrow we're going to come back, we're going to put it together, and I'm going to show you a bunch of other things too. Okay, so this one we're only going to have one one flower one. Let's make sure this is going in the right way. Okay, which means I need to put my purples here and here. So this is important to try to keep in check which one you want to do and which way it's going to go. So for me, I always reference back to what I was doing. What's the next one going to be? We're going to sew these in strips, and then we'll sew the strips together. So we want to make sure that these are all correct first. All right, that was the thing with laying it out. Let me grab my pins real quick. Laying it all out first is really helpful. So if you're going to do a larger one, and especially if you're going to do more than just the 2 prints, you're going to want to make sure that you lay it out correctly and get all of the designs in the right place. Okay. I see there's a question for me and I can't get to it. Hold
Maybe
on.
fork pins down the sewing line?
Maybe. I don't particularly love the fork pins. Could you use 2-sided removable tape to hold the fabric together in addition to pinning? Maybe. I just like to pin it. I don't like to do too much more than I have to. I already feel like, you know, I pin it a lot. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Stab it through. Make sure that's close. Okay, seems pretty good. Might just do the tiniest bit over. There we go. All right, let's try it again. And you'll notice that it's almost always the white wants to go other places, which is interesting. And it's just because the nap is going in opposite directions. Okay, so pin it there. I keep pulling out pins and then they're just magically disappearing. I guess they're just staying on the machine. I can't see them. Okay, so you could see, so part of what I do is I kind of crawl it back with my fingernails, and that helps. If you try to just push it back, it's not going to work. There's no grip, so you kind of got to like scritch it back. It's not really the right word, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
It kind of works. Okay, so I'm going to put this in same way. See if I can reach around, grab that, take my pin out. I'm going to sew forward, backward, and then across. Again, oops, I didn't do it on the white side this time. Dang it. Let's see how close it is. If I have to redo it, I'm going to have to redo it because I don't want the line to show on the white. That's pretty good. So let's see, because this is exactly what I was talking about, is that you're more likely to kind of miss it on the other side. So if I turn it here, I can't actually see that gray coming through there at all. So I feel like that's okay. Okay. If you wanted to, you could absolutely stitch over this again. You just have to take that stitch out. And I don't want to do that if I don't have to. I might show you one more just so you guys can see if I mess up another one.
Okay.
Okay. So now I want to put these. I see you throwing my rulers around.
How's your foot? I just knocked off a ruler onto the floor, and the foot was between the ruler and the floor, so not the floor.
So my foot.
You're not bleeding?
Not bleeding.
Okay,
doesn't look like it.
Sorry.
Those ruler corners they're tough, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily, your foot's tough too.
That's right. It's not the first time that's happened. All right, so marking those two together, I'm going to do the same thing, kind of pull this back. Okay. Put some pins in here. Yank it back from where I want it to be. Come on, little guy. There they are. I was like, I know I put them over. All right, there's the pins. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, same thing, but I'm going to sew it from this side because I want to see where that little gray line is. Put my needle down, take my pin out. Okay, and it's really important that you get it under there. Put the needle down first because as you see, as soon as you start, playing with it at all, it moves. And then I'm going to back stitch. We'll see. Maybe third time's a charm. Oh, look at it. I'm getting better every time. Okay. Still a little wonky here, but it's going to be okay. I promise. It's a great, it really is one of the selling points to Cuddle for me is it's just so much easier to get away with not being perfect. Okay. All right. So now We are there. So now we're going to do one more. So on the other side here, we're going to do one more row. And then we'll be able to sew all of these together. So this guy's going to go in the middle. Whew, it's a good thing I cut out the right pieces. Would not be the first time that I had done it not quite right. Okay, so we're going to have this little 9 patch is what we're going to do today. And we're going to get this piece together. And tomorrow we'll tackle the rest of it. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to put these together. Okay, match up my corners. I'm going to sew it on the white side. So I'm going to pin on the white side. Okay, so I'm going to put a pin there. Do the same thing here. Stab a pin and stab it through there. Try to get these nice and lined up. You can sort of see the difference in the pile height too on this one. Like the nap of the digital cuddle is a little bit shorter than the Cuddle 3. It'll pop up a little bit once it's washed because of the way that it is pressed when you print it. It kind of smashes the nap down a little bit, but there's no real difference in the product at all. And like I said, when you wash it, that kind of fluffs up again. Maybe we'll have to do that experiment too. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of scritch it back there a little bit, get those to line up as well as I can, and then pin it. Oops. And kind of just push that back a little bit so I can see underneath because it just wants to come up as soon as I let go. All right, so now I've got those pinned. I'm going to sew across here again. And then we'll just have one more like that. Sort of. Okay. Okay, put it in, put the needle down. And again, I told you 90-14 stretch needle. It's important with this fabric because it will help feed through the fabric better. If you are sewing with Cuddle and you have had some skip stitches, usually that is related to not having the right needle. So if you're sewing with a universal needle, you'll often end up with skip stitches. All right. Oh, see, getting better, getting better. Okay. The first one will be, you practice. All right. So then we're going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to remember this time that I want the white on top. So I'm going to put these together and then I'm going to flip it. See, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Bar.
Okay, so get that stuck together. I'm going to do a little pin in here. Come over here, do the same thing again. All right. Now we'll pin it above the line and below the line one more time. So this double pinning works really well for lots of different things when you're working with Cuddle. And it really just keeps it so that you don't have to take the pins out as you go. It holds it in place pretty darn well. Okay. All right. One more time. So you're going to continue this process for as many circles as you have in each row. There we go. So if you have 4 rows that have, 6 in them, you're going to make, you're going to put 6 of these together and then do it 4 times. Okay, so it's kind of nice to figure out how big you want your quilt, and then you can figure out how many of these you're going to need. So remember that each of these squares ends up being about 5.5 because that's what we've marked as those squares. Okay, so now I'll take the pins out once more. Open it. Oh, that one's pretty far off. It moved again. That's all right. We'll figure it out. Okay, so now we want to make sure that our nap is going the same for all of them. Okay, so weirdly, this is now the front of our quilt, and you can sort of see how this, don't go anywhere. You can sort of see how this is going to lay, is that it's going to be, these things are going to flop over. Okay, so this is the front of our quilt. That's the back of our quilt. It's just these pieces. So now what we do is we sew these rows into a whole big thing together. Okay, ready for that?
Ready.
I know, it's crazy, right? Okay, so now we do it like this. So this way should be much easier in getting these to match for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is now our naps are going in the same direction. Okay, so this will be a little bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing where we pin the corners, and then we're going to go from side to side. So I want to match these really carefully. Okay, and I can't nest my seams because of the way that we want those to actually flip over. They're not going to get caught down anyway, but I'm going to pin them, and I'm going to pin on each side of that. So I'm going to do that very carefully to keep those where I want them to be. And then we're just going to hope for the best. That's what I tend to do. You know, you just hope, pray that it works out. No. The other one worked out fine. It'll be okay. I think this one's actually going to be really pretty. I love this fabric. I love this little bee fabric. I think it's just gorgeous. And it's fun because it has so many little purple colors in it that you could have a whole variety of purples on the back. Okay. Grab that up here. Can you move the camera just a little? Sorry. I can't see. Can't see through it as well as you guys. There are definitely times when you guys have a better view than I do. That was one of them. Okay. All right. So I've got that one, and I'm going to get this one over here the same way. I'm going to stab it in.
And you don't press seams with Cuddle.
No, I don't ever press them. We really don't need to. With this, it's just going to flop right over, and it'll be fine. I have a little trick to show you with it. The one thing with like knits are just hard to press because the knits don't like to press. They don't want to stay in one position. Cottons, you can press and crisp them up and they'll be beautiful. Knits just have a really hard time doing it. Like we don't, you don't do it with t-shirts. You don't ever like press the hem with those. You just turn them under and sew. Like, yeah, knits are just different that way. Oh, sorry. I want to pin in between. I got all excited. I was like, yes, I get to, oh no, never mind. Okay. I'm not sewing yet. I do want to do all of my double pinning because if I don't do this, it is definitely going to shift on me. So I put my pins all along this edge. And what I'm going to aim to do is sew right along here and let it go from one square to the next. So this one I can see I got just past this corner. So I'm actually going to aim up when I hit here so that I'm going to try not to get those corners tucked in. All right. So because I don't want to pin those in place really, I want to just catch the edge of it. So I'll pin this all down, move to the next one. And when I did this with the luxe cuddle, I will say the luxe cuddle is interesting because there's much more like forgiveness in things. Like Cuddles 3, you can see more, which is partly why I wanted you guys to see this because I was definitely finding in the darker fabrics, it was harder to see and I knew it would be much harder for you guys to see. So you can see all the little mistakes, quote unquote, but they actually work pretty well. So we'll get this in here and reach over, put that down, take my pin out. Okay. And sew back to that edge, and I'm just going to go straight. Okay. Again, it's a straight stitch, 3.5 stitch length. No need to put a straight or a stretch stitch in here. I do want to not sew over my pins though. Okay, so this is the part I need to kind of keep an eye on where I'm aiming. And then it's going to be just to the right of where the pins are. And then I'm going to head back toward the corner. Okay, and then I'll do a little back stitch and come off. All right, let's see how that worked. Oh, look at it. I got it on the white back there. That was the back side. That was great. Okay.
All right.
Whew. Because that's the one I want to make sure that the white is, on the line as well as I can, just because it does show. The other thing you could use is like the pencils, like I have a pink pencil downstairs that you could write on it. That would be easy. Okay. So then you can see. That's how we're working out. So now it's going to be this checkerboard fashion. Okay, so we'll do one more. Want to make sure I lay it out, look at it, make sure I'm sewing the right sides together here. Okay, we're going to sew these together. Oops, I want to pin it this way so that I have more of my whites on top. I'm going to line those up, grab my pins, and do this again. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to get these to kind of come together. You can see at the corner, match them up as well as I can. So part of it is matching the seam, but also the depth there, so that when I sew over that corner, I'm catching them both. And I found that if I pin on either side, which seems like a lot, it can't get shoved anywhere extra. So it keeps it a little bit better. Okay, come over here and do the same thing. Get those kind of nested together and then pin it real well. All right. Yeah. All right, and then we're gonna come up here, do the same thing, stick a pin in, stick a pin, get those corners to match, because we're gonna end up using these marks the whole time to get things to match up the way that they are supposed to, because as you see, the fabric wants to move, it likes to do other things. Okay, so we'll get those pinned, and then I'm gonna do the pins in between. Okay. So again, these should be all, yep, running the same direction. We can tell because we put our little marks on the back to make sure our nap's going the same way. It is definitely something on a project like this, I feel like it's one that I would really obviously want to double check, because a lot of projects, it doesn't really matter. And if you're working with the luxe cuddle, it won't matter as much. With the regular cuddle, with the flat cuddle, you can see the difference it'll make with how the nap is going with the colors. Okay, so it can really change it. So we want to make sure that the naps are going the same way on the back. On the front, they're going to go different directions because that's the way this works. Okay. Pull that down a little bit so I can see it and make sure it's nice and even. Somehow I'm pulling pins out of the pin cushion again.
That's what they're for.
I know. I'm just like, where did they all go? Maybe off the back of my machine. You know how this goes, guys. All right, so now we've got it pinned the whole way. So I've got my intersections pinned, and then I've got the double pinning here. So these pins will all come out, and then these pins here are going to stay. All right, let's try that one. Okay, so same thing. Stick it in. Crank that down. And then I'm going to back stitch and stitch across and just hope for the best. Okay, I'm going to try to get right past where that corner is. And same way here, this one is a little bit high, so I'm going to aim for the bottom of the line, not so over my pins. And make sure that that's nice and flat. This is definitely where you could get little puckers if you're not careful. Okay. Do a little back stitch and clip my threads. All right, so at this point, we have the whole quilt back done. It's quilted, basically. Okay, all pieced together. Get those out of the way, and I'll turn this over so you can see. So there we go. Look at how cute that is. Okay, really lovely little design. So at this point, your quilt could be any size that you want it to be. So this one, I'm just doing the little guy here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the middle pieces in. I'm going to show you tomorrow how to do that, how to make a little template and put these little circles or the little squares in. I'm going to show you just really quickly how that is going to kind of end up like. Okay, is that these are going to come together in this fashion so that they'll be every other. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. Isn't that going to be cute?
Yes.
So pretty. All right, we'll make sure that our naps are going the same way. I can see my naps are going opposite directions right now, and we want to make sure we'll fix that. Okay, but this is how it's going to work. We're going to lay this whole thing out. So tomorrow I'm going to give you some tips on how to get these insides in there, how to get them to stay where you want to, and what kind of stitches you want to use to make it look extra pretty. So that'll be really fun. We'll come back tomorrow, same time, so 10 a.m. Pacific on the Facebook page or the YouTube page, and we will do section 2. And I will have some more samples done. I'll talk to you more about the purple one that I did and some of the stitches in that, because there are a variety that I did and different lengths and what I found worked and what didn't work as well. So all of that good stuff will be available tomorrow. We'll do that. So join me then. We have a winner for today. Today's winner is, where is it? There it is, Dorothy F. So congratulations. Please send us a message through Facebook, or you could send it, I guess, through YouTube too. If you're on Facebook, send it through Facebook. Send us a message with your mailing address and email, phone number. We will get you a kit, and we will send that out to you to say thank you so much for sharing our Sew Together Tuesday videos. We're always so happy that you're here with us. Remember, if you haven't gotten the pattern, that you can go to our blog post and you can get the pattern there. You take all the notes on the back. It's just one simple page, so it's like lots of room for you to take notes on the other side. Okay, and you can make your own version of this. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll show you how to do the middles. And until then, happy sewing.